Most businesses don't break all at once. They drift. Quietly, incrementally, one small compromise at a time. Most businesses don't fail all at once. They drift. Quietly, incrementally, one small compromise at a time.
Welcome to Built to Carry, the podcast for business owners who have built successful businesses but find themselves carrying more of the weight than they ever expected. I'm Darren Cioffi. I'm a fractional CFO, business coach, entrepreneur, and business owner. For more than 30 years, I worked alongside business owners, helping them understand their numbers, improve profitability, strengthen cash flow, and build businesses that don't depend on them for every decision. Over those 30 years, I've learned something important. Most business problems aren't financial problems. The financial systems are usually just the first place they show up. The real issues are almost always structural. They're hidden in leadership. They're hidden in systems. They're hidden in decision making. They're hidden in habits that have been repeated for years. Built to Carry is about helping you build a business strong enough to carry growth, carry change, carry challenges, and ultimately carry on without everything resting on your shoulders. Because your business should be built to carry you, not built to crush the owner. Now, let's get to today's episode. Welcome, everybody, to today's episode. Today, we're going to talk about the branches. Why growth exposes weakness faster than failure. Now, if you've been following along, we've talked about the roots. We've talked about the trunk. We've talked about financial structure. Today, we're moving into the branches. And if you're like most business owners, this is the part you've been waiting for. Because everybody wants growth. More customers, more revenue, more employees, more opportunities, more locations, more market share. See, growth is exciting. Growth is validating. Growth feels like success. But here's the thing. Growth doesn't solve problems. Growth reveals them. And that's a lesson that took me years to fully understand. One of the most common things I hear from business owners is, if we could just get a little bigger, this problem would go away. If we could just get a little more sales, if we could just land a bigger account, if we could just hire a few more people, if we could just increase revenue, then everything would get easier. But here's the problem, is that almost never happens. In fact, the opposite usually happens, because growth amplifies what already exists in your systems. So if your systems are weak, growth exposes it. If your communication is weak, growth exposes it. If your leadership is weak, growth will expose it. If financial controls are weak, growth exposes it. Growth doesn't create weakness. It shines a spotlight on it. Now let's get back to our tree. So when a tree starts growing new branches, something interesting happens. The roots have to support more weight. The trunk has to carry more load. The tree has to move more resources. Everything becomes more demanding. Now imagine a tree with a weak root system. See, would adding more branches help? Of course not. It would make the problem worse. Yet that's exactly what business owners do all the time. See, the business is struggling with systems, so they chase growth. The business is struggling with communication, so they chase growth. The business is struggling with leadership, so what do? They chase growth. They're adding branches to a structure that's already overloaded. See, a few years ago, I worked with a company that was growing rapidly. Revenue doubled in less than 2 years. The owner should have been thrilled. Instead, he was miserable The more revenue they generated, the more problems they had. Customers were frustrated. Employees were overwhelmed. Cash flow was tightening. Mistakes were increasing. The owner looked at me one day and said, Darren, I don't understand it. We finally got the growth we wanted. So why does everything feel harder? Because growth wasn't the solution. Growth is the stress test. It revealed weakness that had been hiding for years. The business wasn't breaking because it was growing. The business was breaking because it wasn't prepared to grow. This is something most people underestimate. See, growth creates complexity. More customers mean more service requirements. More employees mean more management. More revenue means more financial oversight. More opportunities mean more decisions. Everything gets more complicated, and complexity requires structure. So you can't manage a 50-person company the same way you manage a 5-person company. And you can't run a $5 million business the same way you ran a $500,000 business. At some point, the systems have to evolve. The leadership has to evolve. The owner has to evolve. And that's where many businesses get stuck. See, I remember working with a business owner who had built a successful company from scratch. He was smart, driven, committed. The business had grown significantly. The problem was he was still managing like a startup. Every decision came through him. Every customer issue came through him. Every employee question. The business had grown. He hadn't. And I don't mean that as a criticism. I mean, it's reality. The skills that create growth are not always the skills that sustain growth. Eventually, the owner has to stop being the person who does everything and become the person who builds the structure. That's a difficult transition for many entrepreneurs. Now, let's talk about something that makes business owners uncomfortable. So I like making business owners uncomfortable. Growth requires letting go, not abandoning responsibility, not lowering standards, letting go of control, because you cannot scale what depends entirely on you. Let me say that again. You cannot scale what depends entirely on you. Eventually, somebody else has to make decisions. Somebody else has to solve problems. Somebody else has to own outcomes. And that's scary because nobody cares about the business the way you do. I get that. I understand it. I've heard it 1,000 times. But the alternative is worse. The alternative is becoming the ceiling that limits growth. Here's something that surprises people. Failure is often easier than growth. Failure simplifies things. You have fewer customers, fewer employees, fewer decisions. Growth does the opposite. Growth demands more leadership, more communication, more accountability, more structure, more discipline. That's why some businesses survive being small businesses for years, then struggle the moment they become successful. Not because success is bad, because success demands a stronger structure. A healthy tree doesn't grow straight up forever. It spreads, its branches extend, new growth appears. The same thing happens in business. Departments emerge, managers emerge, new opportunities emerge. But every new branch requires support. Every new branch creates responsibility. And every new branch consumes resources. The question isn't whether you should grow. The question is whether the structure underneath you can support the growth you're pursuing. Let me tell you a story about opportunity. I had a client who was offered a major contract, the kind of contract most business owners dream of. It would nearly double revenue. Everyone around him was excited. Employees were excited, partners were excited, even his family was excited. Then he called me and asked, should I take it? Now, most people probably would expect me to say yes. Instead, I ask questions. Do we have the staff? Do we have the systems? Do we have the cash? Because what people don't realize is you're going to need cash for growth. Do we have the management structure? And can the business support this opportunity? After looking at everything, the answer was no. At least not yet. And that was one of the smartest decisions he ever made. Because a year later, after strengthening the business, he landed an even larger opportunity and handled it successfully. Growth isn't about saying yes to every opportunity. It's about being ready for the opportunities you accept. So let's talk about what healthy growth looks like. See, healthy growth isn't chaotic. It isn't exhausting. It isn't constant firefighting. Healthy growth feels different because systems improve, people develop, leaders emerge. Decisions happen closer to work. The owner spends less time reacting and more time planning. And that's what healthy growth looks like. Not perfection, capacity. So here's the real question. How do I grow? But I think there's a better question. What is my business capable of carrying? See, that's a different conversation. Because once you understand capacity, you understand growth. Growth isn't about desire, it's about structure. And structure determines capacity. So here's my challenge for you this week. What weaknesses would growth expose in my business today? Where am I already operating beyond capacity? And what structure needs to improve before I pursue more growth? See, because growth is not the reward. Growth is a test. It tests your roots, your trunk, your systems, and your leadership. And the business that thrives aren't the ones that grow the fastest. They're the ones that build the capacity to carry growth when it arrives. Not next time, but now. So next time we're going to jump into talking about the leaves, the visible part of the business, the part everybody sees, and why so many business owners still feel drained even when everything looks successful from the outside. I'm Darren Cioffi. Thank you for joining me on Built to Carry. And remember, drift is inevitable. Collapse is optional. I'll see you next time, right here.
The bank says pressure, everybody smiling, but the structure gets lesser. Payroll Friday, can't sleep Thursday night. Everybody needs answers and they're looking left and right. Every problem routes back to the same damn chair. Everybody says they got it till nobody's there. No alarms, no crash, just a slow pull off course. You don't notice drift till the weight gets worse. Built to carry, it doesn't look like danger. Built to carry, feels normal to the owner. One more fix, one more file, one more late night while till the business owns the builder instead of getting stronger. Instead of getting stronger. Cash moving fast, but the margin's getting thin. Growth covering weakness like paint over rusted tin. Meetings about systems, but nobody follows through. Everybody wants clarity, still depends on who you build. The machine, now the machine won't stop, and every small shortcut becomes another crack. Structure, not hustle. Correction, not